Hey, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling. Thanks for tuning in. It's about time I ransacked my cassette collection again. I haven't done that in a while, and I thought I'd go through my Van Halen cassettes. It's not complete, but it's got most of them and a couple interesting things. So I'll go over those now on this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Cassette tapes, of course, back in the day were probably the most common thing you'd find bootlegs on, because they were so easy to duplicate back then. And I don't have a lot of bootlegs. I've gotten rid of ones over the years, but I have kept a few, and I've got this one here. This one is, well, it says Van Halen in concert on the side of it. That's what the side of the tape looks like. And it's mostly songs off the first album, and it's got a couple songs off the second one. It's got DOA and Somebody Get Me a Doctor. It says California 1977. This J card is actually like a Polaroid. You can see where it was like a bad cut job done around it. That's what it says on the back. So they probably did a bunch of cassettes on whoever. And this is what the cassette itself looks like. It's got a black and white photo of David Lee Roth there in the corner. So that kind of comes first in my Van Halen cassette collection. So now we get into the regular albums. This is my copy of the first album. This is a relatively new copy. All of these cassettes I'm going to show you are Canadian issues. Like a lot of my cassettes, I started with cassettes. As I got CDs, I replaced the cassettes, then I rebought the cassettes just to have my favorite bands and cassette collections. This is a Canadian Columbia House edition, relatively new, and you can tell by the tape itself, it's a clear colored tape. That's the first one. Next up, Van Halen 2, of course. This plain black and white look, man, when I used to look for cassettes in the bins, I used to see so many tapes that looked like that. The WEA tapes that Canada put out. You see, I don't know if you can see that or not, but WEA is written down there in the corner. It was embossed on the cassette case itself. Warner Electra Atlantic. That was the Canadian way of doing things. This is what the cassette itself looked like. Van Halen 2. Now next up is actually, I'm a big fan of looking at the variations in what cassettes looked like, and this is a very old edition of Women and Children First. So you can take a look at that. Quite old. It's a Canadian edition. That's what the side of it looked like. I like finding these in pawn shops and things, even if I don't buy them. I just like to look at them. So yeah, you can see it's Canadian edition there. And I love the way that typewritten font is. To me, that's very vintage. So that's probably from '80, no doubt about it. Cassette's pretty beaten up. I doubt that it works. So that's the only one that looks like that I have. Next up is my personal favorite of the original 6 Van Halen albums, and you will not convince me any different. I love this album a lot, fair warning. My version of this that I have was originally American, but this is a Canadian edition. Nothing particularly fancy about it. Although I don't know if it's of any consequence or not, where the little the spindles. Whoops, no, that's a good one. The spindles are black and not white, which is kind of odd. Like the twisty parts here, the parts that you used a Bic pen to wind them up. Next up is the first one that actually uses the entire surface of the front of the J card. This is, of course, Diver Down. And that's what it looked like on the side and on the back. This was actually the first cassette. That's what the cassette itself looked like. Right there. This is the first one to actually have something inside of it. The first one had a little bit of credits inside of it, but this one actually folded out. So that cool picture of the band on stage, opening for the Rolling Stones. On the back, picture of the group. Little tiny bit of credits. First Van Halen album I actually bought, I bought it in 1988, bought it off my cousin, and then I replaced it, but it looked a lot like this. So this is my first Van Halen album, 1984. This is a really new edition of this. This is from the late 90s, probably one of the last issues of it, and it is a Canadian issue. I want to get back to the back cover here in a second. That's the cassette itself. Very, very shiny. Probably hasn't been played too many times. Minimal information. Now, I want to point out something that Warner Music of Canada, WEA Music of Canada, did in 1983 and 1984 with every cassette I've ever seen in any genre. They would put a picture of whoever it was in the middle of this. You go find a Canadian cassette that was released on Warner Brothers, Elektra, Atlantic, Geffen, any Warner distributed label, and it'll look like that. Almost guarantee it. Next up, 5150. Of course, this one uses the entire surface as well. Logo's a little more personalized on the side of it. Now this one's unique. If you look at this tape, it's a different kind of tape. It's got these lines all the way through it with the embossed WEA. And there's the back cover. This cassette looks a little bit different. It's got kind of a goldish bronze printing on it, which is a little bit different. There's a little bit inside of here, but not a lot. It's got the lyrics to the songs, basically. The Super Cassette logo, that's another indication that you're looking at a Canadian-made cassette tape. The first Van Halen album that I bought new was this, even though I had an American edition. This is LU812, this is a Canadian edition. Although by this time they looked a lot the same. Front and sides looked the same, and the back looked the same, except that the cassette was a clear American cassette. What I find is interesting about this, what they did with LU812, not only the way that they listed the song titles on the back cover, but also the lyrics inside of the album, is that they didn't do them in order, they did them in alphabetical order, which to me only makes sense if that's the order that the songs are in. So that's that, and that. All the stuff that's inside the cassette and CD. This on the bottom here, I don't know if you can see this, this one's for you, Pa. That would be for Jan Van Halen, Alex and Eddie's father, that passed away while in between 5150 and this album. I've only got one more thing to show you. This is my favorite Van Halen album, not only of the Sammy Hagar years, but period. For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, 91. Love this album. This is a Canadian Columbia House edition. I love the red that they use here. It's sort of that leather pattern. And yeah, I really like this album a lot. So I don't have anything past here for Van Halen cassettes. And I actually don't know if there would have been anything newer than maybe Van Halen 3 in 98. I doubt there would have been anything come up past that. And this has, what you see here, same as the CD and the, I'm sure the record. I wouldn't know, I don't have the record. I'd love to. So yeah, that's just a look at my Van Halen cassettes. I like holding on to my cassettes and my favorite groups. And often, like a lot of people in my age group, that's how we started our music collections with cassettes. So I'm going to do a few of these here. And thanks for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions.